Chapter 2. Wedge Antilles saluted Admiral Ackbar and held the salute until the Mon Calamari returned it. "Thank you for seeing me, sir." "It is always my pleasure to see you, Commander Antilles." Without moving his head, Ackbar glanced with one eye towards the other man standing in his office. "General Salm and I were just discussing the impact of having Rogue Squadron back in the fleet. He feels you are all but ready to go. The unit roster is impressive." The brown-haired fighter pilot nodded. "Yes, sir. I wanted to speak to you about the roster if I could, sir." Wedge saw Sam's face close up. "There have been changes made to the roster without my consultation." Sam turned away from the floating blue globe hanging in the corner and clasped his hands behind his back. "There are circumstances beyond your control that made those changes necessary, Commander Antilles." "I'm aware of that, sir. Lieutenants Hobby Cliven and West Jansen will do well bringing new training squadrons along." I didn't want to lose them, but that was a battle I lost a long time ago. "And I understand why half the slots in my squadron are going to political appointees." Ackbar's head came up. "But you do not approve." Wedge bit back a sharp comment. "Admiral, I spent a good deal of the 2.5 years since the Emperor died touring worlds new to the Alliance because someone decided our new allies needed to see we had heroes, that we weren't all the bandits the Empire made us out to be. I gave speeches. I kissed babies. I had holograms taken with more world leaders than I ever knew existed. I was there as our propaganda machine built Rogue Squadron up into the needle that exploded the Emperor's Death Star balloons." The human general in command of the Rebellion Starfighter Training Center at Folor smiled coolly. "Then you do understand why it is important that our allies have representatives within our most celebrated squadron." "Yes, but I know the difference between a real fighter squadron and the monster you made Rogue Squadron out to be. The Empire isn't going to lie down and die just because they see a dozen ships jump into a system." "Of course not." "But, General, that's what our diplomatic corps is suggesting. The Bothans want a pilot in Rogue Squadron because they found the second Death Star and we killed it. And I understand why having two Thepharans is important. We have to appease the two conglomerates that control Bacta production." Ackbar held up a webbed hand. "Commander, a question to the point is this. Are the pilots selected inferior to other candidates?" "No, sir, but—" "But—" Wedge took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Luke would be telling me that anger isn't good. He's right, because anger won't get me any closer to what I want. Admiral, I'm commanding a fighter squadron. We're an elite squadron, and the only thing I want to change about it is our survival rate. You've let me have the pick of the new pilots coming over to us, and I've got a fine group of them. With some more training, I think I can make them into the sort of unit that will strike terror into Imperial hearts. And," he added, nodding at General Sam, "I concur with the selection of all the pilots listed on the roster you have except for two, Rogue 5 and my executive officer." "Lieutenant Deegan is an excellent pilot." "Agreed, General, but he's from Corellia, the same as me and Corin Horn. It strikes me that having Corellia overrepresented in Rogue Squadron is not politically wise." One of Ackbar's eyes shifted slightly. "You have someone in mind to replace him?" Wedge nodded. "I'd like to use Gavin Darklighter." Sam shook his head adamantly. "He's just a Tatooine farm boy who thinks the ability to shoot womp rats from a speeder can make him a hero." "Begging your pardon, sir, but Luke Skywalker was just a Tatooine farm boy whose ability to shoot womp rats from a speeder did make him a hero." The general snarled at Wedge's riposte. "You can't mean to suggest this Darklighter has Commander Skywalker's control of the Force." "I don't know about that, sir, but I do know Gavin has every bit as much heart as Luke does." Wedge turned towards the Mon Calamari. "Gavin had a cousin, Biggs, who was with Luke and me in the trench at Yavin. He stayed with Luke when I was ordered to pull out. Biggs died there. Gavin came to me and asked to join my squadron. What Commander Antilles is not telling you, Admiral, is that Gavin Darklighter is only 16 years old. He's a child. You couldn't tell it by looking at him. Ackbar's barbels quivered. Forgive me, gentlemen, but determining a human's age by visual clues is a skill that has long since eluded me. General Salm's point is well taken, however. This Darklighter is rather young. Is the Admiral suggesting that someone somewhere within the Alliance won't take Gavin in when we need to put someone in the next wing cockpit? I don't think Commander Varth would balk at bringing Gavin on board. That may be true, Commander Antilles, but then Commander Varth is far more successful at keeping his pilots alive than you are. Ackbar's even tone kept the remark away from being a stinging rebuke, but not by much. And yes, I know Commander Varth has never had to face a Death Star. Rogue Squadron's leader frowned. Sir, Gavin came to me because Biggs and I were friends. I feel an obligation to him. Even General Sam will agree that Gavin's test scores are very good. He'll do his redemption scenario in 3 days, and I expect his scores there will measure up. I want to pair Gavin with a Stavinen, Shield. I think they'll work well together. He opened his hands. Gavin's all alone and looking for a new home. Let me put him in Rogue Squadron. Ackbar looked at Sam. Aside from this nebulous age problem, you do not disagree with this selection? Sam looked at Wedge and bowed his head. In this case, if Darklighter does well in his redemption trial, I see no problem with letting Commander Antilles have his way. Which means my choice for XO gets opposed fully. Not that I expected less. You are most kind, General. Ackbar's mouth opened in the Mon Calamari imitation of a smile. Spoken with General Solo's degree of sarcasm, I believe. I'm sorry, sir. Wedge smiled, then clasped his hands at the small of his back. I would also hope the General would see his way clear to letting me choose my own executive officer. The Admiral looked at his starfighter commander. Who is presently in that position? Rogue Squadron's XO is Captain Errol Nunnam. She's the sister of Nian Nunnam, one of the other heroes of Endor. She's every bit as skilled a pilot as her brother, and worked extensively with him during his smuggling days. Sullust is providing us aid, and having her in Rogue Squadron would definitely increase support for the Sorosub government. Commander, do you quarrel with this assessment? Wedge shook his head. No, sir, not at all. Then the problem is? She's a wonderful pilot, Admiral, and I'd love to have her in my squadron, but not as my XO. In that position, I need someone who can help me train my pilots. What Errol does, what her brother does, is intuitive to them. They can't teach it to others. As my XO, she'd be frustrated. My pilots would be frustrated, and I'd have chaos to deal with. And you have another candidate in mind? Yes, sir. Wedge looked at General Sam and braced for his reaction. I want Tycho Celchu. Absolutely not! The explosion Wedge had expected from Sam did not disappoint him. Admiral Ackbar, under no circumstances will I allow Celchu to be anywhere near an active duty squadron. Just because he isn't in prison is no reason for me to want him in my command. Prison? Wedge's jaw shot open. The man hasn't done anything that warrants confinement. He cannot be trusted. I believe he can. Come on, Antilles. You know what he's been through. What I know, General, is this. Tycho Celchu is a hero. Much more of a hero than I am. On Hoth, he fought as fiercely as anyone, and at Endor, he piloted an A-wing that led a bunch of TIE fighters on a merry chase through the Death Star. He took them off our backs while Lando and I went in and blew the installation's reactor. He fought at Bakura and went on subsequent missions with the squadron, then volunteered, General, volunteered to fly a captured TIE fighter on a covert mission to Coruscant. He got captured. He escaped. That's it. That's all you want to see, Antilles. Meaning? You say he escaped. Sam's face hardened into a steel mask. It could be they let him go. Sure, just like they let him go at Endor. Wedge grimaced, doing his best to banish the anger he felt growing in him. General, you're fighting ghosts. Sam nodded curtly. You're right. I'm fighting to prevent you and your people from becoming ghosts. Well, so am I, and having Tycho with us to train my people will give them the best chance of survival possible. Sam tossed his hands up in disgust and looked at Admiral Ackbar. You see? He won't listen to reason. He knows Captain Selchu is a threat, but he won't let himself see it. I'll listen to reason, sir, when I see the product of some reasoning. Ackbar held up his hands. Gentlemen, please. Commander Antilles, you must admit that General Sam's concerns are valid. Perhaps if there were a way to alleviate some of them, an accommodation could be reached. I thought of that, sir, and I've spoken with Captain Selchu about it. Wedge started ticking points off on his fingers. Tycho has agreed to fly a C-95 Headhunter in our training exercises, with the lasers powered down so that they can only paint a target, not hurt it. He's agreed to have a destruct device installed on the starfighter so that if he goes to ram anything, or goes outside space lanes to which he is assigned, he can be destroyed by remote. When not flying, he has agreed to remain under house arrest unless accompanied by Alliance security or members of the Squadron. He's agreed to undergo interrogation as needed, to have all his computer files and correspondence open to examination, and is even willing to have us choose where he eats, what he eats, when, and where. Sam marched over and placed himself between Wedge and the Mon Calamari Admiral. This is all well and good, and might even be effective, but we can't afford the risk. Ackbar blinked his eyes slowly. Captain Selchu has agreed to these conditions. Wedge nodded. He's no different from you, Admiral. He's a warrior. What he knows, what he can teach, will keep pilots alive. Of course, there's no way General Sam will ever let him fly in combat again. Well, that can be etched in transparent steel. So serving as an instructor is the only way he can fight back. You have to give him this chance. Ackbar activated the small comlink clipped to his uniform's collar. Lieutenant Filler, please find Captain Selchu and bring him to me. The Mon Calamari looked up at Wedge. Where is he currently? Wedge looked down at the deck. He should be in the simulator complex. He's where? Sam's face went purple. You'll find him in the simulator complex, Lieutenant. Bring him here immediately. Ackbar turned the comlink off. The simulator complex? It was Horn's turn leading the redemption scenario. Tycho knows how to fly a type better than any pilot, so I decided to have him fly against Horn. Ackbar's lip fringe twitched. You've taken certain liberties concerning Captain Selchu already, it seems, Commander. Yes, sir, but nothing that isn't necessary to make my pilots the best. I'm being prudent in this, I think. The most prudent course, Commander, if you cared to protect the rest of the trainees there, not just your own, would have been to keep Captain Selchu out of the simulator facility entirely. Sam crossed his arms over his chest. You may be a hero of the New Republic, but that doesn't give you any authorization to jeopardize our security. Perhaps having Tycho fly today was a bit premature. Wedge glanced down penitently. I stand corrected, sir. Ackbar broke the uneasy silence following Wedge's admission. What is done is done. Now, using Captain Selchu in the scenario would have made it that much more difficult, would it not? A smile creeping back on his face, Wedge nodded. Yes, sir, which is what I wanted. Horn is good, very good, and the trio of pilots flying on his side in the exercise are not bad either. Overall, Horn or Bror Jace, the Theferan, are the best pilots in the whole group. Jace is arrogant, which gets under Horn's skin and keeps him working hard. Horn, on the other hand, is impatient. That'll get him killed, and the only way to make that apparent to him is by having someone shoot him up in exercises. Tycho can do that. The door to Ackbar's office opened, and a female rebel officer led a pilot in a black flight suit into the room. Admiral, this is Captain Selchu. Tycho snapped to attention. Reporting is ordered, sir. At ease, Mr. Selchu. Wedge gave the slightly taller man a reassuring smile. The Admiral eased himself out of his chair. You may leave us, Lieutenant. The Mon Calamari waited for the door to close behind his aide. Then he nodded towards Wedge. Captain Selchu, Commander Antilles has told me that you have agreed to a remarkable number of restrictions on yourself and your activities. Is this true? Tycho nodded. Yes, sir, it is. You realize you will be flying a defenseless bomb. You will have no privacy and no freedom. I do, sir. The Mon Calamari closed his mouth for a moment and stared silently at the blue-eyed pilot. You will be treated no better than I was when I served as a slave to Grand Moff Tarkin. You will be treated worse, in fact, because General Salm here believes you are a threat to the New Republic. Why do you agree to such treatment? Tycho shrugged. It's my duty, sir. I chose to join the rebellion. I willingly froze on Hoth. I followed orders and assaulted a Death Star. I volunteered for the mission that got me in all this trouble. I did all those things because that's what I agreed to do when I joined the rebels. He glanced down. Besides, even the worst you can do to me will still be better than Imperial captivity. Sweat gleamed from his bald head. Sam pointed at Tycho. This is all noble, Admiral, but would we expect anything less from someone in his position? No, General, nor would we expect anything less of a noble son of Alderaan. The Mon Calamari picked up a datapad from his desk. I am signing orders to make Captain Selchu the executive officer for Rogue Squadron, and to put this Gavin Darklighter in the squadron as well. Wedge saw Sam's expression sour, so he suppressed his own smile. Even so, he winked at Tycho. 2 flights, 2 kills. Ackbar glanced at the datapad screen, then looked up again. Commander Antilles, I expect to be informed about any irregularities or problems with your unit or personnel. An M3PO military protocol droid has been assigned to your office to help you make out reports. Use it. The Corellian rolled his eyes. As you wish, sir, but I think that the droid could be more useful elsewhere. I'm sure you do, Commander, but those decisions are made by those of us who haven't refused promotions time and time again. Wedge held his hands up. Yes, sir. I surrender, but you don't fool me, Admiral. You like mixing it up in battle the same as I do, but you work with the big ships while I like the fast ones. Good. I am glad we understand each other. Ackbar nodded towards the door. You're dismissed, the both of you. I imagine you have things to celebrate. Yes, sir. One last thing. Wedge looked up, and Tycho turned around to face the Admiral. Sir? They asked in tandem. What did you think about the pilots in the redemption scenario? Wedge looked over at his XO. Did you get Horn? Tycho blushed. Oh, I got Horn, but just not as much of him as I would have liked. Smiling proudly, he added, Admiral, if the pilots I flew against are representative of the rest of the people we have to work with, Rogue Squadron should be operational within a couple of months, and the scourge of the Empire not very much longer after that. And that's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.